He tried to tell you he had the scoop. He tried to tell you he had the inside source. But Jason Lloyd made one fatal mistake. He forgot that Shedeur Sanders is watching. This morning, Lloyd reported that Shedeur had a screaming match with Andrew Berry about a trade. But less than 10 minutes later, Shedeur fact-checked him in front of the entire world. Shedeur quoted the video and said, "I wasn't even in the building today. I was at home." Stop making up fake scenarios to scare the fans. It's sad. He didn't just deny it. He proved Lloyd's source was completely imaginary. The local media is panicking because they realized they can't control the narrative anymore. I have the full timeline of how the media tried to manufacture a trade crisis that never existed. Subscribe and hit the bell right now. If you want to support Shedeur against the clickbait, click that button. Let's look at the receipts. Here is the tweet that ended Jason Lloyd's week. A high-profile journalist went on live radio and destroyed a rookie quarterback, calling him one of the worst in 25 years, and saying he should be immediately cut from the team. But here's the unbelievable part. Just moments later, that same analyst was forced to make a single choice for the future of the franchise, and he immediately picked the worst ever rookie to start over the $230 million franchise player. This isn't just a bad take. This is a nuclear-level contradiction that absolutely exposed the entire hot take media machine. The internet is already calling for this guy's job, because you cannot call a player a historical bust 1 minute and then name him your QB1 the next. We have the full audio, we have the receipts, and this is the story of how one journalist's desperate need for a narrative completely imploded on live air. The chaos began on the Make It Right show, where The Athletic's Jason Lloyd was discussing the firing of Kevin Stefanski and the front office drama plaguing the Browns. Normal stuff, right? Until the conversation shifted to Shedeur Sanders. That's when Jason Lloyd reached for the detonator and didn't hold back. He immediately labeled Shedeur's very presence a hindrance to potential coaching candidates. Think about that for a second. He claimed candidates would look at the situation, see Shedeur, and say, "Nope, I want nothing to do with that." He was just getting started. Lloyd went full nuclear on the kid's actual game, claiming Shedeur really struggled with coverages, really struggled with protections, and that the turnovers were absurd. But the kicker, the line that instantly went viral, was when he definitively stated that Shedeur was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL over the last 25 years statistically. Let that sink in. Not just a struggling rookie, but a historic disaster. He said this with his whole chest, and his final word on the matter was clear. Shedeur should not be on this team next year. Period. End of story. Get him out of Cleveland. It was a complete professional assassination. But that wasn't the whole story. Lloyd's argument was built on two pillars: Shedeur's alleged poor play and the so-called stupidity and nonsense around him. The circus of media attention, his famous father, and the non-stop content. This, Lloyd insisted, infects the walls of the organization. But here's what he conveniently forgot to mention. Shedeur never created that circus. His dad is an NFL legend. He's a low-round draft pick, thrust into a collapsing organization. When reporters shoved microphones in his face, he answered them professionally. He never demanded interviews, never beat his chest, and was, by all accounts from actual players and coaches, a complete professional in the building. The real noise wasn't coming from Shedeur. It was coming from the media, from the outside world, from the hot take ecosystem desperate to see the son of Dion fail. Jason Lloyd spent so much time talking about how the noise makes Shedeur untouchable that he couldn't actually name a single real-life problem Shedeur caused in the locker room. When pressed on it, all he could offer was vague talk about media questions and outside perception. So, the man is blaming a rookie for reporters asking him questions. Come on, man. That's not on Shedeur. That's on the media making mountains out of molehills and people like Lloyd buying into the narrative. And what happened next would shock everyone. Before the ultimate implosion, let's zoom in on Lloyd's on-field critiques. He claimed Shedeur only scored one offensive touchdown in his last 2 games, and that he struggled with the basic fundamentals of coverage. It sounds awful until you add one critical thing: context. Shedeur was a rookie who got thrown into one of the worst, most dysfunctional situations in football. The Browns were a complete dumpster fire all season. The offensive line was inconsistent. The play calling was questionable. And his coach was coaching for his job. Not exactly a recipe for a young quarterback's success. The 1 touchdown in 2 games stat. Those were his first 2 NFL starts against NFL defenses with NFL speed, learning on the job while everything around him was in chaos mode. We're acting like rookie mistakes are some kind of death sentence. Tom Brady threw 0 touchdowns in his first game. Peyton Manning threw more interceptions than touchdowns his entire rookie year. Quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield were completely written off after their Cleveland tenure, only to become franchise QBs elsewhere because the situation changed. The worst quarterbacks in 25 years claim is cherry-picking at its absolute finest, based on a handful of games with 0 contextual awareness. But then came the kicker, the moment that made the entire interview collapse. Jason Lloyd just spent 10 minutes performing a character assassination, declaring that Shedeur's presence was a cancer and that he should be out of the organization immediately. No grey area. Strom, Shedeur should not be on this team next year. That was his definitive conclusion. But then, just minutes later, one of the hosts asked the ultimate, unavoidable question, forcing him to put his money where his mouth was. Strong, if you had to choose between Shedeur and Deshaun Watson as your starting quarterback next year, who would you pick? Hold up. Wait. Run that back. The same man who just said Shedeur was a historical disaster, a coach-killing turnover machine, answered without a moment's hesitation. It's Shedeur every time. Every time. You cannot make this stuff up. The man who spent 10 minutes telling the world Shedeur is one of the worst QBs in NFL history, a player so bad he shouldn't even be on the roster, just admitted he'd pick him over the man with the fully guaranteed $230 million contract. The silence after that answer was deafening. It was a complete, career-defining moment of self-contradiction, and it exposed everything wrong with the hot take culture. You have to ask yourself, how can it be both? How can Shedeur be so fundamentally, historically bad, worse than almost every QB over the last quarter century, and yet still be the better option than your highest paid player? The two statements are a complete logical impossibility. You can't have it both ways. The only way this makes sense is if Jason Lloyd's initial take wasn't analysis at all. It was narrative desperation. He was so committed to his initial pre-draft prediction that Shedeur would be a disaster, a problem because of his famous father, that he had to twist the facts and ignore the on-field talent to fit his narrative. He had to make the numbers say he was a bust. But when forced to choose between the real disaster, Deshaun Watson, who is stealing money and should have been cut, according to Lloyd's own words. And the kid with flashes of talent. The truth slipped out. Lloyd knows Watson is an unsalvageable mistake, that the Browns need to get off of the mistake as fast as possible. His preference for Shedeur has nothing to do with Shedeur being perfect, and everything to do with him being the only viable potential-filled path out of the mess the front office created. In his own mind, he justified the contradiction by saying Watson is the bigger mistake, but that still doesn't change the fact that he named a historical bust his starter. Let's be clear about what was truly exposed on that radio show. It wasn't Shedeur Sanders. It was the flawed logic and the manufactured drama of the sports media. Lloyd claimed coaching candidates would run away from the Browns because of Shedeur's baggage. But what do coaches actually care about? Talent, potential, arm strength, football IQ, and work ethic. All the things that made Shedeur a highly touted prospect, and the things he showed in flashes during his brief, chaotic starts. The baggage Lloyd keeps talking about is media creation. That's not a real football problem. Any competent coaching staff can manage media questions. Any real leader can manage outside noise. What they can't do is develop a quarterback who doesn't have the physical or mental makeup to succeed. And Shedeur has both. Writing him off after a few games in a collapsing organization, while simultaneously admitting you'd start him over your $230 million quarterback, makes absolutely zero sense. The truth is, Shedeur Sanders deserves a real chance. Not a few games in a system of organizational chaos, judged by someone who clearly doesn't even know what he believes about him. When you say a guy is one of the worst ever, and then immediately say you'd start him over your franchise quarterback, that's not analysis. That's just noise. And that noise is exactly what Shedeur's been dealing with since day one. People creating problems that don't exist and twisting themselves into pretzels to make their predictions look right. So, who got exposed on live radio? It wasn't the rookie quarterback who showed up, worked his tail off, and created zero drama. It was the veteran journalist caught completely unable to keep his own opinion straight for 30 minutes, prioritizing a hot take and a false narrative over the on-field reality and the truth of his own convictions. The tape doesn't lie. The actual people in the building don't lie. And his own contradiction definitely doesn't lie. The Browns are a mess. The quarterback room is a disaster. And in the middle of all this chaos, Shedeur Sanders is being blamed for problems he didn't create, while simultaneously being called the better future. The truth is, Shedeur Sanders deserves a fair shake. Who do you believe? The journalist desperate for drama? Or the kid who showed flashes despite the worst circumstances? If you want to stay ahead of all the drama, the hot takes and the contradictions in the NFL world, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment and let me know. Do you think Shedeur deserves another shot? Or is Jason Lloyd right about moving on? Let's talk about it.